Hello, and welcome to Fear Noir. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy reading them. If you enjoy slow, haunting stories that gently draw you deeper into the darkness, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, settle in, let your body relax, and allow the outside world to slowly fade into silence. Tonight, a story waits for you in the shadows. So close your eyes, listen carefully, and let the darkness carry you into Fear Noir. Story 1. I have always been drawn to abandoned places. There's something about buildings that used to be full of life, but now sit empty and rotting that pulls me in. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's the feeling of stepping into a frozen moment in time. Whatever the reason, I've explored old factories, empty houses, and forgotten warehouses before. But one place changed the way I look at all of that. About a month ago, I heard about an old hospital on the outskirts of my town. It had been shut down for more than 20 years. People said it closed suddenly after incidents, though no one ever explained what those incidents were. Some claimed it was because of budget cuts. Others insisted it was something darker. Of course, the word haunted came up every single time. Most locals avoided it completely. Teenagers dared each other to step inside, but rarely did. The building sat behind rusted fencing, hidden by overgrown trees, like it wanted to disappear from memory. Naturally, I wanted to see it for myself. I went in the late afternoon, thinking it would be less frightening with some daylight left. The sky was gray and heavy with clouds, but there was still enough light to see the building clearly. It looked exactly how you'd imagine an abandoned hospital would look. Windows were shattered or missing entirely. Paint peeled off in long, curling strips. Weeds pushed through cracks in the pavement. The sign above the entrance hung crooked, barely attached. The main doors were chained shut, but after walking around the side of the building, I found a service entrance that was slightly open. Not wide, just enough to squeeze through. That should have been my first warning. I slipped inside. The smell hit me instantly. Damp, mold, rotting wood. But underneath that was something metallic, like old blood. I told myself that was just my imagination filling in the blanks. I turned on my flashlight. The beam was weak against the darkness, but it was enough to show me what was inside. Hospital beds lay overturned in the hallway. Wheelchairs were tipped on their sides. Cabinets hung open with their contents spilled onto the floor. Old medical machines covered in dust and rust sat like skeletons against the walls. Some doors were still labeled radiology, pediatrics, intensive care. It felt wrong seeing those words in a place so dead. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing far louder than they should have. Every sound bounced off the tile and concrete and came back to me, distorted. In one of the rooms, I found a desk with patient files scattered across it. Papers were yellowed but still readable. Names, dates, diagnoses. Seeing those made everything feel more real. This wasn't just a creepy building. People had been treated here. People had suffered here. I moved up to the second floor after checking the stairwell to make sure it was stable. The air felt heavier up there, thicker somehow. The hallway stretched long and narrow, lined with doors on both sides. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. At first, I thought it was just the building settling or the wind pushing through broken windows, but then I heard them again, slow, deliberate, above me. There wasn't supposed to be an accessible third floor. I had checked the outside. The upper windows were boarded and broken, but there was no visible staircase beyond the second level. The footsteps moved. Not randomly, they moved toward the stairwell. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stood completely still, listening. The steps stopped. Then there was silence. I swallowed and called out, "Hello?" My voice sounded small, weak. No answer. I should have left right then. Instead, I moved toward the stairs that led up to the roof access level. The door at the top was supposed to be sealed. That's what I had read online. As I climbed, each step creaked under my weight. Halfway up, I felt it, that sensation you get when someone is watching you. I reached the top and pushed the door open. It swung inward slowly. The hallway beyond was darker than the rest of the building. My flashlight flickered once before stabilizing. At the far end of the corridor, I saw it. A figure, standing perfectly still, human-shaped, but I couldn't make out details. It was just a darker shape against the darkness. No face, no movement, no sound of breathing, just there. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something else, curiosity, stubbornness, disbelief, pushed me to take a step forward. The figure didn't react. I took another step, and then it was gone. Not like it walked away. Not like it slipped into a doorway. It simply wasn't there anymore. My flashlight flickered violently. The hallway went completely black for 3 long seconds. In that darkness, I felt exposed, like something had moved closer. The light came back on. The hallway was empty. I didn't wait anymore. I turned and ran down the stairs, my footsteps crashing loudly through the silence. I didn't care about being careful or quiet. I just wanted out. When I reached the main lobby, I slowed down enough to catch my breath. That's when I noticed the wall. Near the entrance, on the dusty surface beside the old reception desk, were handprints. Clear. Fresh. The dust had been disturbed recently. The prints looked damp, darker than the surrounding wall. I hadn't touched that wall, and unless someone else had been in the building with me, my stomach dropped. I backed toward the side door, keeping my eyes on the lobby. Nothing moved. No sound followed me. I stepped outside into the cold air, and it felt like I could finally breathe again. I hurried to my car and got inside, locking the doors immediately. Before starting the engine, I made the mistake of looking back. One of the broken windows on the second floor had a shadow behind it. It was faint, but it was there. I drove home without stopping. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel the entire way. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hallway. That figure. Around 3 a.m, my phone vibrated on my nightstand. The sudden sound made me jump. I picked it up. A message from an unknown number. No text. Just an image. My chest tightened before I even opened it. The photo was taken inside the hospital. I recognized the hallway immediately. The same corridor where I had seen the figure. The angle was wrong, though. It wasn't from where I had been standing. It was from farther back, like someone had been behind me. In the background of the photo, near the end of the hall, stood the figure, blurred but unmistakable, and in the foreground, the back of my head. I dropped the phone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The photo had been taken while I was there. Someone or something had been close enough to photograph me without making a sound. I deleted the image immediately. Then I blocked the number. The next day, I changed my phone number entirely. I haven't gone back to the hospital. I tell myself it was a prank. Maybe someone followed me in. Maybe local kids set up cameras to scare trespassers. But that doesn't explain how they got my number. It doesn't explain the handprints, or the way the figure disappeared without moving. Even now, when I drive past the road that leads towards the hospital, I feel my chest tighten. Sometimes during the day, I glance toward the broken windows as I pass, and sometimes I see movement, just a shadow shifting slightly behind the glass. I tell myself it's light and clouds playing tricks. But deep down, I know better. Whatever is inside that hospital does not want to be forgotten. It waits in those empty halls. It stands in that corridor, and if you step inside, it doesn't just watch you. It makes sure you know you were seen. Story 2. I don't usually talk about things like this. I've tried to convince myself it was stress, exhaustion, maybe even some kind of blackout episode. But no explanation I come up with ever feels complete. It always leaves something out. And the worst part is this. Sometimes I don't know if I escaped that night, or if something let me go. It happened last year. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I boarded a local bus to head home after visiting a friend. I had stayed longer than I meant to, and that bus was the last one on the route. I remember feeling relieved when I saw its headlights pulling up. I didn't want to spend money on a cab, and I definitely didn't want to walk. The bus looked normal, old, slightly worn down, the usual faded paint and flickering interior lights. I stepped inside and dropped some coins into the tray. The conductor didn't say anything. He just looked at me for a second. Not a long stare, just a second too long. Then he turned away without a word. I brushed it off and moved toward the middle seats. There were only a few passengers scattered around. A man by the window near the back. A woman sitting upright near the front. Another figure a few rows ahead of me. Everyone was quiet, but that's not unusual for late-night buses. People keep to themselves. The engine rumbled, the bus pulled away. At first, everything felt completely normal. The hum of the engine, the vibration under my feet, streetlights sliding past the windows in slow rhythm, occasional bumps in the road. I leaned my head back and stared out the window. 15 minutes passed, maybe 20, and then something started to feel wrong. The bus hadn't stopped once, not at a single designated stop. No one had pressed the button, no one had stood up. No new passengers got on. That was strange, but I told myself maybe it was just a slow night. Then I looked outside more carefully. The road didn't look familiar. I take that route often. I know the shops we pass. The turn near the old cinema. The gas station with the bright blue sign. None of that was there. Instead, the road outside seemed darker, less developed, fewer lights. I pulled out my phone to check the map. No signal, not even one bar. I frowned and looked around the bus properly for the first time. That's when I noticed the passengers. They hadn't moved, not slightly. The man near the back was still sitting in the exact same position, hands on his knees, head tilted slightly forward. The woman near the front hadn't adjusted her posture at all. No one shifted, no one coughed, no one blinked. A chill crept up my spine. I told myself they were just tired. People zone out. It happens. Then the man at the back slowly turned his head. Our eyes met. He didn't blink. not once. His eyes were open wide, too wide, glassy, but focused directly on me. I looked away immediately, my chest tightening. Don't overthink it, you're just anxious. I stood up, deciding I'd ask the conductor what was going on. Maybe there was road construction. Maybe they changed the route temporarily. As I walked down the aisle, I noticed something else. The bus felt longer. The rows of seats seemed to stretch farther than I remembered. The lights flickered once overhead. I reached the front and glanced at the rearview mirror above the driver's seat. My stomach dropped. The driver's face wasn't visible, not blurred, not turned away, just dark, like a shadow was sitting in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel but no features at all. The mirror reflected the steering wheel clearly, the dashboard, the windshield. But where his face should have been, there was only blackness. "Paya," I said quietly to the conductor, trying to sound calm. "This isn't the usual route." He didn't respond immediately. Very slowly, he turned his head toward me. The movement wasn't natural. It was too smooth, like something rotating on a hinge. Then he smiled. I will never forget that smile. It stretched too far across his face, wider than it should physically go. His lips pulled back enough to show too many teeth, and his eyes, they were focused on me with something like amusement. "You weren't supposed to get on this bus," he said softly. The voice didn't match his mouth. It sounded deeper, echoing slightly, as if it came from somewhere behind him. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What do you mean?" I whispered. The bus suddenly jerked to a stop. The doors hissed open, cold air rushed in. I looked outside. There was nothing, no street, no buildings, no trees, no lights in the distance, just darkness. Not normal night darkness. This was thick, endless. Like the world ended right beyond the bus steps. I turned around slowly. Every passenger was now facing me, every single one. Their heads tilted slightly, almost in sync, all of them staring, none of them blinking. The silence inside the bus felt heavier than anything I've ever experienced. No engine noise, no wind, nothing, just dozens of unblinking eyes. That's when panic fully took over. I didn't think, I didn't plan, I ran. I sprinted toward the open doors and jumped out. I don't remember hitting the ground. I don't remember landing. The next thing I knew, someone was shaking me. I opened my eyes to bright headlights and the sound of a truck engine idling nearby. A middle-aged truck driver was crouched over me, his hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" he kept asking. "Can you hear me?" I was lying on the side of a highway, cold pavement under my back, real stars above me, real air in my lungs. I sat up too fast and looked around wildly. No bus, no conductor, no passengers, just an empty stretch of road. "Did you see a bus?" I asked him, my voice shaking. "It just stopped here." He frowned. "Bus? There's no bus route here at night, not for miles." He told me he found me lying near the shoulder, unconscious. Said I was lucky he spotted me before another vehicle did. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain. What would I even say? That I boarded something that wasn't meant for me? That I was told I wasn't supposed to be there? I thanked him, and he drove me to the nearest town. I never filed a report. Never told my family the full story. I told them I must have fainted from exhaustion, but sometimes late at night when I'm waiting at a bus stop, I see headlights in the distance. A bus approaches slowly. It looks empty, completely empty, but as it passes without stopping just before it disappears into the dark, I feel it, that same heavy silence, that same pressure in my chest, and I know it isn't empty. It's just waiting for the night I get on again. Story 3. I am parked beneath the harsh white glow of a 24-hour gas station canopy. The fluorescent lights above me buzz and flicker, bathing everything in a sickly brightness that feels almost surgical. All 4 doors of my cruiser are locked. The engine is still running. The heater is blasting hot air into the cab. Every interior light is on, and my hands will not stop shaking. I am a county law enforcement officer. I've been on the force for 2 years. In that time, I built a reputation for being methodical and strict about procedure. I follow the manual. I don't cut corners. I believe in routine, positioning, documented steps. In my line of work, control comes from protocol. If you follow the rules exactly, you reduce the unknown. Tonight proved that belief wrong. My patrol sector is a 40-mile stretch of isolated 2-lane highway that runs along the eastern edge of a massive freshwater lake. It is one of the loneliest assignments in the county. To the left of the road, the land drops sharply into black water. To the right, there is nothing but dense pine forest. No houses, no streetlights, no side roads, just asphalt trapped between deep woods and deeper water. I work the graveyard shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights are silent. I cruise slowly, watching for speeders or stranded motorists. The loudest sounds are my tires on pavement and the occasional crackle from dispatch. Tonight started like any other. Clear sky, bitter cold, a layer of fog drifting off the lake and spilling across the highway. I was sipping stale coffee when I spotted a vehicle a few miles ahead of me. It was a dark minivan, older model. It was moving well below the speed limit. As I closed the distance, I saw that the passenger side taillight was out. I also saw the vehicle drifting lazily over the center line, then correcting, then drifting toward the shoulder near the embankment. Burned out taillight plus lane weaving equals reasonable suspicion. Protocol was clear. I activated my overhead lights. The red and blue strobes cut through the fog. The minivan took almost a quarter mile to respond before finally signaling and pulling onto the narrow gravel shoulder, far too close to the drop-off into the lake. I positioned my cruiser exactly as trained. Offset to the left, wheels angled, park, seatbelt off. Flashlight in hand. The air outside was freezing. I could hear the engines idling and the faint sound of water hitting rocks below. I placed my palm firmly on the trunk lid before walking up the driver's side. Standard procedure. Leave prints. The metal was wet, colder than it should have been. When the driver rolled down her window, I saw what looked like a normal, exhausted family. A tired, middle-aged woman driving, a man asleep in the passenger seat, 2 children in the back under blankets. Nothing about them seemed threatening. The woman apologized for drifting, said they had been driving for a long time. Her voice sounded hoarse and distant. When her fingers brushed mine while handing over her license and registration, her skin felt like ice. I returned to my cruiser to run the plates. Everything was routine, until I looked at the dashboard monitor. The live camera feed should have shown the clean, intact minivan parked in front of me. Instead, it showed a wreck, a van that looked like it had been dragged from the bottom of a lake. Roof crushed, frame twisted, covered in algae and mud. Through the shattered rear window were 4 bodies, bloated, waterlogged, rotting, the same family. Their eye sockets were hollow and black, and they were smiling. I looked up through my windshield. The minivan in front of me was perfectly normal, brake light glowing red, silhouettes still inside. I looked back down. The corpses were closer to the lens now. The mother raised her arm and tapped against the broken glass from inside the wreck on my monitor. Tap, tap, tap. Then dispatch came over the radio. The plates I read belonged to a vehicle from a 30-year-old missing persons case. A family of 4 who disappeared near this exact stretch of road, suspected to have driven into the lake. The vehicle was never found. I looked up. The minivan was gone. No engine noise, no tire tracks. Just a spreading puddle of black water soaking into the gravel. The smell hit seconds later. Rotting fish, stagnant mud, and then my cruiser lurched violently sideways. Something was dragging me toward the lake. The rear of my vehicle slid toward the embankment as if hooked by an invisible cable. When I looked out the passenger window, I saw them rising from the water. The family, but not whole. Their corpses were attached to massive, muscular tentacles extending from the lake's depths. The appendages were fused into their backs, using their bodies like puppets. They gripped my cruiser with skeletal hands and dragged. The passenger window shattered inward. One of the corpses reached inside. The rear tires slipped over the embankment. I thought that was it. I floored the accelerator. For a second that felt like an hour, the engine and the lake fought over me. Then the front tires caught. The cruiser surged forward. There was a tearing sound, wet and sickening, as the skeletal hands ripped free. I don't remember how fast I drove after that. I only stopped when I saw these fluorescent lights. Now I'm sitting here. The passenger door is crushed inward. The window is gone. On my passenger seat, among the broken glass, are 3 severed skeletal fingers. They are coated in lake mud that still smells like decay. I have checked twice. They are real. I am not going back to the station. I am not filing this report. I am leaving the keys in the ignition, and I am walking away from this job. If you are driving alone at night near deep water, and you see a vehicle drifting slowly ahead of you, especially one that seems just a little too tired, a little too helpless, do not pull it over. Do not approach. Some things don't need assistance. Some things are still trying to finish a journey they never completed, and they will use you to get there. Story 4. It was Tuesday, but days don't really mean anything to me anymore. There are only 2 states in my life: working or trying to recover from working. Most of the time I fail at the second one. I woke up twisted sideways in my old leather armchair. My neck felt like it had been bent the wrong way for hours. Every time I tried to straighten it, a dull ache pulsed from the base of my skull down into my shoulders. The TV was still on, muted. It washed the room in a pale blue light that made everything look sick. My apartment is small, barely more than a living room with a kitchen attached, and it always smells faintly of chemicals no matter how much I scrub. Tonight it was worse. Cold coffee on the table, industrial degreaser soaked into my clothes. The sharp scent clung to me like it had fused with my skin. My eyes burned. I blinked hard and looked at the microwave clock. 8:54 p.m. I'd slept maybe 40 minutes. Not enough to feel rested, just enough to wake up heavy and confused. My phone suddenly vibrated on the table. The sound was sharp and mechanical, like a drill biting into wood. Greg, My supervisor. Greg never called at 9 at night to chat. He only called when something had gone wrong, and he needed someone desperate enough to fix it. I let it ring 3 times before picking it up. My arm felt slow, disconnected from the rest of me. "Yeah," I croaked. My throat felt raw. "Hey, you awake? Kid, it's 9 o'clock, Greg barked. Even through the phone, I could almost smell his cheap cigars. "I was sleeping," I muttered. "What's up?" "You know the regional distribution center off Route 4? Big concrete warehouse behind the old coal plant?" I stared at the TV glow while my brain caught up. Route 4, 40 minutes out. Nothing around but trees and empty road. "Yeah, I know it." "Miller walked out," Greg said. "Didn't even call, just texted, 'I'm done. Keys are in the Dropbox. We've got a corporate inspection at 6 a.m. If that floor isn't spotless, we lose the contract. I need you there. Now." My entire body wanted to refuse. I hadn't had a full day off in weeks. My back ached constantly. My hands buzzed even when I wasn't holding the machine. But Greg knew exactly how to hook me. "I'll give you triple time," he said quickly. "Cash under the table. And if inspection goes smooth, you get the rest of the week off. Paid. Triple time, a week off." My mind jumped through bills, credit cards, rent, the hole I could never seem to climb out of. "Fine," I said. "I'm on my way." The drive out to Route 4 felt like sinking into something deep and endless. Once I passed the edge of town, the streetlights thinned out until they disappeared completely. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the dark. The trees on either side leaned in like walls. I thought about Miller, 3 years working together. The guy never complained, never quit a job halfway, and then just, "I'm done. Keys are in the box." What could make someone walk away from steady pay like that? The warehouse appeared suddenly out of the dark. A massive concrete block with one flickering lamp over the loading dock. The key was in the drop box. Inside, I flipped the breakers. The building groaned as rows of fluorescent lights hummed to life one by one. The massive hall filled with white light. Tall, empty racks stretched into the distance, perfectly straight lines disappearing into shadow. The floor scrubber was waiting near the back wall. A Clark Focus 2, heavy, worn, loud. I filled the tank with water and poured in the purple degreaser. The smell hit instantly, sharp and chemical. I propped the side door open with a wooden wedge to let cold air drift in. I wanted the floor to dry fast. I plugged in the thick yellow extension cord and gripped the handles. The machine vibrated hard as soon as it powered on. The hum of the motor and the wet slurp of the vacuum echoed through the empty building. Hours passed in a blur of straight lines and turns. Push forward, pull back, overlap the last strip. The dirty water collected in gray sludge. My shoulders burned from steering the heavy machine. Sweat soaked through my shirt despite the cold air. At 1:30 a.m., I shut it off to empty the recovery tank. The sudden silence felt wrong, too big. The warehouse seemed to expand in the quiet. As I walked toward the drain, I saw something move at the edge of my vision. A shadow slipping between the racks. I spun toward row 14. Nothing. "Hello?" I called. My voice bounced back to me, hollow and thin. No answer. "You're tired," I muttered. "That's all." I drained the tank and went back to the machine. The moment I turned it on again, the lights went out. Everything died at once. Total darkness. I froze. No hum. No air movement, no distant building noise, just thick, complete black. Maybe the breaker tripped, I told myself. I knelt down and unplugged the extension cord from the outlet. Better safe than messing with wiring alone. I stood and headed toward the open door. Then I heard it. A rising whine. The motor. I turned around. The scrubber was moving. It rolled slowly down the center of the hall, and someone was pushing it. A dark shape hunched over the handles. "Hey!" I shouted. No response. The machine moved steadily toward me. The brushes spun. The vacuum roared. I looked down in disbelief. The yellow cord lay at my feet, unplugged. The machine kept coming. I ran for the open door. I could see outside, the gravel, the trees swaying in the night air. I lunged forward and slammed into something solid. I fell backward into the wet sludge. The door was wide open, but I couldn't pass through. It was like hitting invisible glass. I stood and tried again, pressing my hands forward. Nothing. "Why can't I get out?" I yelled. Behind me, part of the warehouse flickered back to life, but the light was wrong. It was orange, thick, dirty. The entire building looked older, decayed. The racks were rusted and crumbling. Dust coated everything. The scrubber sat in the center of the hall, except now it was scorched. Blackened metal, warped frame, and beside it, a body. I walked closer, my legs trembling. The corpse wore my uniform, my boots, my face frozen in terror. The rest of the lights flickered on across the hall. I looked down the endless rows, hundreds of scrubbers, all burned. And beside each one, a body, my body, some fresh, some skeletal, some barely more than bones wrapped in scraps of blue fabric. The realization hit like lightning. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't one bad night. It was a loop. I had done this before, over and over. The pain came next, blinding white, and then black. I gasped and opened my eyes. My apartment, the armchair, the TV casting blue light across the room. Sweat soaked my shirt. My heart pounded in my ears. "Just a dream," I whispered. "You're overworked." That's all. I wiped my face with shaking hands. Then my phone vibrated on the table. I looked at the microwave clock. 8:54 p.m. The screen lit up. "Greg." I stared at it as it buzzed. It rang 3 times. I answered. "Hey, you awake? Kid, it's 9 o'clock, Greg barked. My mouth went dry. "I was sleeping," I heard myself say. "I think I was having a weird dream." Story 5. It was Tuesday, but days don't really mean anything to me anymore. There are only 2 states in my life now, working or trying to recover from working. Most of the time I fail at the second one. I woke up twisted sideways in my old leather armchair, the kind that used to look expensive 20 years ago, and now just looks tired. My neck was bent at an angle no human body is designed to hold for long. When I tried to straighten it, a dull ache spread from the base of my skull down into my shoulders. The TV was still on, muted, filling the apartment with a pale blue glow that made everything look drained of life. My place is small, basically a living room with a kitchen attached, and it always smells faintly of chemicals no matter how much I clean it. Tonight the air felt heavier. Cold coffee sat untouched on the table. The sharp scent of industrial degreaser clung to my clothes and skin as if it had soaked into my pores permanently. My eyes burned. I blinked hard and glanced at the microwave clock. 8:54 p.m. I had slept maybe 40 minutes, just enough to wake up feeling worse than before. My phone vibrated against the table, the sound harsh and mechanical in the quiet room. Greg, my supervisor. Greg doesn't call at 9 p.m. to chat. He calls when something's wrong and he needs someone desperate enough to fix it. I let it ring 3 times before picking it up. My arm felt slow, like it didn't fully belong to me. "Yeah?" I croaked. My throat felt scraped raw. "Hey, you awake? Kid, it's 9 o'clock, Greg said. His voice was sharp, impatient. "I was sleeping," I muttered. "What's going on?" "You know the regional distribution center off Route 4? The big concrete warehouse behind the old coal plant? Route 4, 40 minutes out. No neighbors, no lights, just road and trees." "Yeah, I know it." "Miller walked out," Greg said. "Didn't even call, just sent a text. I'm done. Keys are in the Dropbox. We've got a corporate inspection at 6 a.m. If that floor isn't spotless, we lose the contract. I need you there, now." My whole body wanted to say no. My back hasn't stopped hurting in months. My hands buzz even when I'm not holding a machine. I haven't had a real day off in weeks. But Greg knows exactly how to get me. "I'll give you triple time," he said quickly. "Cash, under the table. And if inspection goes smooth, you get the rest of the week off, paid." Triple time, a week off. My mind jumped to rent, credit cards, the way my bank balance never quite recovers. "Fine," I said. "I'm on my way." The drive out to Route 4 felt like sinking into something bottomless. The streetlights disappeared once I passed the edge of town. My headlights carved a narrow tunnel through the darkness. Trees lined the road like walls, their branches leaning inward. I kept thinking about Miller. 3 years working together. The guy was solid, never complained, never bailed on a job, and then just, "I'm done." What breaks someone like that? The warehouse rose out of the dark without warning, a massive gray block under a single flickering lamp. The key was exactly where Greg said it would be. Inside, I flipped the breakers. The building groaned as rows of fluorescent lights buzzed on one by one. The giant hall flooded with cold white light. Metal racks stretched high and far, disappearing into shadow. The floor scrubber waited near the back wall. A Clark Focus 2, heavy, beat up, reliable. I filled the tank with water and poured in the purple degreaser. The chemical smell hit immediately, sharp enough to sting my nose. I propped the side door open with a wooden wedge, so cold air could flow in. Then I plugged in the thick yellow extension cord and gripped the handles. The machine vibrated hard the moment it powered on. The hum of the motor and the wet suction of the vacuum echoed through the empty building. Hours passed in straight lines and careful turns. Push forward, pull back, overlap, oil stains turned into gray sludge. My shoulders burned from fighting the weight of the scrubber. Sweat ran down my spine even though the air was cold. At 1:30 a.m., I shut the machine off to empty the recovery tank. The silence hit instantly. It felt too big. The warehouse seemed larger in the quiet, like it had stretched while I wasn't looking. As I walked toward the drain, something moved at the edge of my vision. A shadow slipping between racks. I turned sharply toward row 14. Nothing there. "Hello," I called. My voice bounced back at me, thin and hollow. No answer. "You're exhausted," I muttered. "That's all." I emptied the tank and went back to the machine. The second I turned it on again, the lights went out. Every single one. The machine died too. Darkness swallowed everything. I stood completely still. No hum, no air movement, no distant building sounds, just thick black. Maybe the breaker tripped. I knelt down and unplugged the extension cord from the outlet, just in case. I stood and headed toward the open door. Then I heard it, a rising mechanical whine. The motor. I turned around. The scrubber was moving, rolling slowly down the center of the hall. Someone was pushing it, a dark shape hunched over the handles. "Hey!" I shouted. No response. The machine kept coming. I looked down at my feet. The yellow cord lay there, unplugged. The motor roared louder. I ran for the open door. I could see outside. Gravel, trees, night air. I lunged forward and hit something solid. I fell backward into the wet sludge. The doorway was open, but I couldn't pass through. It was like running into invisible glass. I stood and pressed my palms forward. Nothing. "Why can't I get out?" I yelled. Behind me, lights flickered back on, but not the same cold white. These were thick, dirty orange, like rusted sunlight. The warehouse looked different, older. The racks were eaten away by rust. Dust covered everything in a heavy layer. The scrubber stood in the center of the hall, except now it was blackened, scorched, twisted metal, and beside it, a body. I walked closer on trembling legs. The corpse wore my uniform, my boots, my face, frozen in terror. More lights flickered on down the hall. I looked, row after row, hundreds of scrubbers, all burned, and next to every one, a body, my body, some fresh, some reduced to bones wrapped in blue fabric. Understanding hit me like lightning. This wasn't the first time. I had been here before, over and over, working until something happened, dying, resetting. The pain came next, blinding white, then nothing. I gasped and opened my eyes. My apartment, the armchair, the TV glowing blue. Sweat soaked my shirt. My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. "Just a dream," I whispered. "You're overworked." I wiped my face. My phone vibrated. I looked at the microwave clock. 8:54 p.m. The screen lit up. "Greg." It rang 3 times. I answered. "Hey, you awake? Kid, it's 9 o'clock, Greg said. My mouth went dry. "I was sleeping," I heard myself say. "I think I was having a weird dream." And as he started talking about Route 4, about Miller walking out, about triple time and inspection at 6, I realized something that made my stomach turn. I already knew what he was going to say, every word, exactly, because I have answered this call before. Story 6. It was 4 a.m., that strange gray hour where the world feels slightly out of place. Not quite night, not quite morning, just a hollow pause between them. The air outside carried the smell of wet asphalt and that sharp, damp cold that settles into your bones before sunrise. Everything felt muted, like the world was holding its breath. I stepped onto the porch and saw my dad at the trunk of the car. The yellow porch light cast long, trembling shadows across the driveway, making the sedan look like some crouched animal waiting to move. My dad was loading bags with the same focused silence he always had before long drives. He didn't look up when I approached. He just lifted, stacked, adjusted. Mechanical, precise. My mom stood by the passenger door, with her arms wrapped tightly around herself against the cold. She reminded him quietly not to forget the smaller bags on the porch steps. My brother leaned against the rear door, half asleep, his face lit by the pale blue glow of his phone. Everything looked normal, ordinary. I walked over to help with the bags. I felt the rough fabric of the suitcases under my palms, the icy rim of the trunk lid biting against my fingers. The wind cut against the back of my neck. It all felt real, solid, grounded. Then I remembered I'd left my charger inside. "I'll be right back," I muttered. already jogging toward the front door. The door creaked softly as I slipped back inside. The house was completely dark. The contrast from the porch light made it feel deeper than usual, heavier. But the TV in the living room was still on. Its blue light flickered against the walls, stretching the furniture's shadows into long, warped shapes that twitched when I wasn't looking directly at them. I glanced toward the living room. My dad sat in his recliner. My brother sprawled across the couch. My mom in her usual chair, all watching TV, all perfectly still. I didn't stop walking. I was in a hurry. But something felt delayed, like the room noticed me a second too late, like whatever was sitting there only realized I existed after I'd already passed. I went up the stairs, my steps muffled against the carpet, halfway into my room, my hand reaching toward the charger on my nightstand. The thought hit me. I had just seen them outside. All three of them. Loading the car. There was no way they could have come in that fast. There was no way I would have passed them in the hallway without seeing them. I froze in my doorway. My heart began to pound, so hard it hurt. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The sudden buzz felt violent. I pulled it out. A message from my dad. "Where are you? Why are you late?" My stomach dropped. I looked at the top of the screen. No service, no Wi-Fi, nothing. But the message had arrived anyway. I slowly turned toward the hallway. The TV's blue light still flickered downstairs. Then I heard it. "Son," my dad's voice, perfect, exactly like him. Same tone, same slight impatience. "Bring me some water." I didn't move, because something else finally clicked. When I passed them in the living room, none of them had blinked, not once. Their skin had looked too smooth in the flickering light, too pale. They hadn't reacted to my footsteps. They were staring at a screen full of static, wide, dead eyes reflecting nothing. I stepped back into my room and gently shut the door. I turned the lock. The click echoed too loudly in the silence. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, a slow creak from the bottom of the stairs. Weight, heavy pressure pressing down on old wood creak. Pause, creak. It was learning how to walk. "I'm thirsty." The voice was just outside my door now. I stared at the thin strip of darkness under it. There were no feet, no shadows shaped like a person, just something wide, blocking the light entirely. Then, 3 knocks, not on the door, on the wall beside my bed, exactly where my head would be if I were lying down. "The water, son." I stopped breathing. My phone vibrated again. Another message. "Forget the charger. We're leaving. Get out here now, or you're staying behind." I barely had time to process it, because the thing outside my room spoke again. Same voice, same tone. "Forget the charger. We're leaving. Get out here now, or you're staying behind." It said the words a split second before my phone buzzed with the notification. Word for word. It wasn't copying my dad. It was copying what hadn't happened yet. Outside, I heard the engine in the driveway roar to life. My real family was leaving. They were going to drive away without me, and whatever was outside my door had stopped knocking. It didn't need to get in. It needed me to come out. "We've been waiting for you," it whispered. The voice no longer came from the hallway. It came from beneath me. From under the bed, the mattress dipped slightly behind my legs, very slowly, as if something long and heavy was stretching out underneath it. My breathing became shallow and fast. I slid off the bed inch by inch, never taking my eyes off the door. The engine outside revved, tires rolled over gravel. They were pulling away. "Don't let them leave you," the voice under the bed said softly. It sounded closer now, right beneath the frame. "I can take you to them." The bed shifted again, a soft, dragging sound against the floorboards. Something was pressing upward from below. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. The mattress bulged slightly near the center, as if something underneath was testing the weight of me. My phone vibrated one last time. A new message: "We're at the end of the driveway. Hurry." Through my window, I saw headlights sweep past the trees. My real family was leaving. I stood there, shaking, caught between two fears. If I stayed in this room, I didn't know what would crawl out from under the bed. If I ran outside, I didn't know if what was waiting in the car was still them. The voice beneath me shifted again, closer to the edge, right below where my feet hung off the mattress. "You're going to be late," it whispered. The whisper no longer sounded like my dad. It sounded layered, like multiple voices pressed into one. "You're already late." Silence returned to the house, complete, empty. The mattress stopped moving. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, very slowly, a hand slid out from under the bed, not reaching for me, not grabbing, just resting on the floorboards. The skin looked waxy in the blue light from the TV downstairs. The fingers were slightly too long, and when they curled against the wood, I realized something that made my blood turn to ice. It wasn't trying to pull me under. It was waiting for me to lie back down, because it already knew. Eventually, Story 7. I've been trying to write this for 3 weeks. Every time I get close to the part that matters, I stop, close the document, make coffee, stand at the window, and watch the street until my thoughts thin out again. Then I come back and start from the beginning, because beginnings are safe. Beginnings don't require you to say the thing you're avoiding. But it's November now. The light is different. The air doesn't carry that smell anymore. And if I don't write this, while I can still feel the outline of it, I'm afraid I'll lose whatever understanding I almost had. So I'll start from the beginning again. The apartment was on Keswick Street, upper floor of a 2-story brick building at the end of a block of nearly identical buildings, built sometime in the 30s, I think. The kind of place that wears its age, honestly. The brick had faded to the color of dried leaves. The wood trim was dark from decades of paint and weather. Aluminum numbers 114 were nailed above the door. Inside the small foyer, a row of old mailboxes held only unit numbers, no names. I sublet it for October from a man named Paul. We weren't friends exactly, more like acquaintances through a mutual connection. He was going to Portugal for a month, working remotely, and needed someone responsible to stay in the apartment while he was gone. I was between leases. The timing worked. We met once to exchange keys. Paul was in his mid-30s, the kind of person who describes himself as low maintenance, and actually means it. He walked me through the apartment quickly, efficiently. He had a cab waiting. "The heat's finicky," he said. Left burner runs hot. Super's in 1B. His name's Walt. Old guy, but he handles things. I said that was fine. He paused at the door, just slightly, the way someone pauses when they're about to say something and decide not to. I noticed it. He didn't speak. October's a good month up here, he said instead. It wasn't what he had almost said. I knew that even then. I'm more certain of it now. He shook my hand and left. The apartment itself was simple, clean, not decorated much. Functional furniture, bookshelves filled with books that looked read, but not displayed for effect. A small kitchen table with 2 chairs, one of which, clearly, never got used. The living room had 2 windows facing the street, and one on the side wall facing the narrow gap between 114 and the building next door. That side window is what matters. It looked out onto a brick wall about 8 feet away. No windows on that face, just brick. Between the 2 buildings was a channel of shadow that never quite filled with light, even at noon. When the sun set behind the buildings in the west, that space went dark first and stayed dark longest. There was no blind, just bare glass. I meant to cover it. I didn't. The first week was good. October on Keswick Street was exactly what you'd want it to be. The trees were deep amber and rust, some almost red. People had pumpkins on their steps. Someone down the block strung orange lights along their hedges that flicked on at dusk. I worked at the kitchen table during the day. In the evenings, I opened the street-facing windows and let the air in. That specific October air, wood smoke cold, and something sweet and fading underneath. It made the apartment feel inhabited in a way that wasn't lonely. I slept well. I cooked. I called my sister. It was a good week. The second week, I started noticing things. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I could explain to someone without sounding foolish. The side window began to pull at my attention. Not because of sound, not because of movement, just a tug. I'd be washing dishes and realize I was looking at it without deciding to. I'd be reading and suddenly aware that part of my mind was angled toward that curtainless square of glass. I bought a tension rod and a cheap curtain panel from the drugstore, hung it up, left it closed. I felt better immediately. That bothered me. The dreams began the same week. They weren't nightmares. They were quiet. In them, I was always in the apartment. Always evening. That flat, golden October light coming through the west windows, turning everything amber. The apartment was always very still, not silent, listening. In every dream, the curtain over the side window was open. I never opened it. It was simply open. I would stand in the living room and know with complete certainty that I should not cross the room and look out. And I never did. I would stand there in the golden light with that knowledge until I woke up. Every morning, 11 days in a row. By the 3rd week, the smell began. It was faint at first, easy to dismiss, something beneath the normal sense of living. Not rot, not mold, not damp, older. It made me think of the backs of old closets, of fabric stored for decades, of air that hasn't been disturbed in a very long time. I checked under the sink, checked the bathroom, checked the coat closet. Everything was clean. The smell was strongest near the side window. Now, I have to say something I can't prove. One Wednesday evening, maybe the 18th or 19th, I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine. The street windows were filled with that sideways amber light that makes ordinary things look briefly important. I was not looking at the side window. The curtain was closed. But I became aware of it. Not visually, not audibly, aware the way you become aware of a presence behind you without turning around. Something was on the other side of that curtain. Not on the fire escape. Not down in the gap. Right up against the glass. Close enough that if I had pulled the curtain aside and stepped forward, there would have been almost no space between us. I don't know how I knew. I just did. The air felt different, thicker, ancient. I didn't move. The curtain didn't move either. The smell grew stronger. Time lost meaning. Eventually, after minutes or an hour, I couldn't tell. The pressure eased. The apartment seemed to exhale. The smell thinned. I poured the rest of my wine down the sink and went to bed with every light on. The next day, I called Paul. He answered with the background noise of somewhere warm and bright. I told him the apartment was great. Just a quick question. Had he ever had trouble with the fire escape? Kids? Animals? There was a pause. Not really, he said. Why? No reason, I said. Thought I heard something. Another pause. The side window, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I said. Silence stretched longer this time. Just keep the curtain closed, he said. That's what I do. How long? I asked. Another pause. Since the 1st of October, he said. It's only October. He ended the call soon after. He didn't explain what happened on the 1st. He didn't need to. I kept the curtain closed for the rest of the month. I avoided that side of the room when the light turned amber. The dreams continued, but they stopped frightening me. They felt like signals, a gauge measuring something I couldn't see. The smell came and went, strongest on cold nights, gone completely when it rained. Nothing ever happened. That's the strangest part. Nothing knocked, nothing scratched, nothing spoke. It simply waited. Every evening, when that October light filled the apartment and the air smelled like wood smoke and the slow sweetness of things ending, I could feel it there, patient, in the channel of shadow between the buildings, waiting in the way something waits when it has all the time in the world. I moved out on November 1st. The trees had gone bare almost overnight. The air was just cold now, just winter. No sweetness, no thinning of distance. Paul returned tanned and easy. He helped me carry my boxes down. At the door, I almost asked what he saw on the 1st of October, almost asked how long it's been there, almost asked if it does anything besides wait. I didn't. He shook my hand. I left. I haven't gone back to Keswick Street. I don't think it leaves that narrow channel of shadow. I think it belongs to that space. And I think October is when whatever separates it from everything else grows thin enough to notice. Paul listed the sublet again last week. October 2025. 1 month. Keswick Street. Upper floor. Good light. Quiet block. The listing says the apartment faces west. It doesn't mention the side window. And it doesn't mention that in October, when the light turns amber and the air smells like something sweet and dying, the distance between you and whatever has been waiting there for a very long time becomes almost nothing at all. Story 8. One of my earliest memories is from a funeral. At the time, I didn't know it was a funeral. I wasn't scared. I wasn't even sad. It was just a room full of adults speaking softly. A lot of familiar faces gathered together. Some of them were crying. I remember that much. And I remember a man lying on a big table. There was an older woman in a robe, speaking gently to everyone. My mother picked me up and carried me closer to the table. The man was being wrapped in clear plastic. I didn't understand what I was looking at. I'd never seen anyone die before. A few of the older kids were given blow dryers. They aimed them at the plastic to shrink it tight against the body. My mother set me down so she could help turn the man to get the wrap smooth. I wandered to the foot of the table with my favorite Ninja Turtle toy. I was playing with it when I accidentally pricked a tiny hole in the plastic between the man's toes. The toy had a sharp edge. I froze for a moment, embarrassed, but no one noticed. I didn't say anything. We stayed there for hours, singing, whispering. The woman in the robe stroked my hair at one point and kissed my cheek. All the town's children were there. Infants, teenagers, everyone in between. They didn't want us to fall asleep. They handed out candy to keep us awake. I still remember nodding off, the sugar not doing much against the late hour. I was barely conscious when I heard a sound. The plastic started turning black. Not gray, not cloudy. Black, like ink, spreading through the hole I had made between the man's toes. It moved. I remember sucking in a breath so cold it burned my throat. It felt like frost forming inside my lungs. My heart pounded louder than anything else in the room. I didn't understand what was happening. The last clear image I have from that night is the kind woman screaming for two men to hold me down while she rushed toward me with a bone saw. She looked apologetic. Then there was nothing. The next thing I remember, I was in a hospital bed. I had tubes in my arm. I was sore. I was confused, but I had toys, comics, stuffed animals. It felt like a strange version of Christmas. The pain faded over time. When I was healthy enough, my parents sent me to live with my aunt in a neighboring town. They told me it was temporary, a fresh start, new friends. My aunt was good to me. She raised me alongside my two cousins without complaint. My parents sent money, but never visited. We didn't talk about them. When they died in the winter of 2016, I didn't even know until long after the funeral. I can't say I miss them. I wish I could. After high school, I chose anthropology as my major. I won't pretend that funeral had nothing to do with it. Our burial rituals are straightforward, burial or cremation. But shrink-wrapping a body in front of the entire town, that wasn't something I'd ever read about. For years, I convinced myself it was a fever dream. But the memory never faded. So when I started my master's program, I decided to write my thesis on that ritual, if it was real. My aunt didn't want to discuss it. She brushed it off as a weird town thing and asked me to consider another topic. But she never said it hadn't happened. That was enough. The town sits in rural South Dakota. If you follow the run-along river northwest past Hilltop and the wheat farms, you'll find a small hillside community of about 550 people. Spotty signal, broken roads, mostly retirees. There's a grocery shop, a church, a bus stop, and a preschool. Not many children. I called the church. The woman from my memory was long gone. I reached Pastor Oswald instead. He answered almost immediately. I introduced myself as a graduate student researching burial rites. I didn't mention I'd grown up there. "We have a ceremony in 2 days," he said. "You're welcome to attend." Respectfully, I drove up that afternoon. The moment I left the highway, my signal dropped. The air smelled the same as it had in my childhood memory. Cold earth and something faintly metallic beneath it. The church was white, old-fashioned, with a small bell tower. The doors were closed. I knocked, but no one answered. I waited in the grocery cafe. That's where I met him. A man in his early 50s, with clear green eyes and a shaved head, sat down across from me after staring a little too long. "I know you," he said. He listed family names. My parents, my aunt. Then he snapped his fingers. "You're Henry's kid." He was Uncle Jerry. I'd never heard of him. We talked for hours. The resemblance was undeniable once I really looked. When I mentioned the shrink wrapping, he nodded. "They still do it," he said. "Good Friday lung." He explained it as a condition tied to the soil. 3 to 5 days after death, a body would release black smoke that made people sick. Burial spread it through groundwater. Cremation spread it through the air. Shrink wrapping contained it. I asked why the children were present. "They're the most susceptible," he said. "If something leaks, we know right away." It sounded insane, but everyone in that town believed it. That evening, the church filled. Old Harland lay naked on a stone altar. Children gathered at the front with blow dryers. The ceremony was calm. Hymns, speeches, stories of Harlan's love for the wheat fields. As the plastic tightened around his body, it began to darken, gray, then black. The congregation watched the children, not the corpse. When the seal held, the room erupted in relieved cheers. The body was placed on a gurney and wheeled outside to a line of mausoleums. No graves. I followed at a distance. The 2 ferrymen, what they called themselves, took a smoke break after realizing they'd gone the wrong way. That's when a crow landed on the plastic. It pecked once. A hole opened. Black gas poured out. It didn't drift aimlessly. It moved with purpose. One ferryman screamed. The other strapped the body down just as it spasmed violently. They duct taped the hole. Inside the church, panic spread. Parents pinned children to the floor. Pastor Oswald clutched a walkie-talkie in one hand and a bone saw in the other. "It's not just a lung disease," Jerry whispered beside me. "It's defiant." The gas had escaped. Harland hadn't wanted to go. I left when asked. On the way down the road, I found a car stopped in the middle of nowhere. Engine running, driver's door open, blood everywhere. Then I saw it. A figure by my car. One arm grotesquely oversized, torso twisted. Too many gleaming white eyes. It wailed instead of speaking. It ran faster than I could. I barely made it into the abandoned car before it tore the door off. I ran into the wheat field. It caught me. It tore off my leg at the knee. I remember the cold as much as the pain. Bleeding out in the dirt, I saw Uncle Jerry sitting beside me. He was translucent. "They don't mean to do it," he said. "They're just clawing for air." He told me he'd been the man on the table all those years ago. He offered me a choice. "If you let me in, I can make this work. Just once." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. My leg grew back. Not mine. Darker skin. Slightly longer. The ferrymen shot the creature in the field. They burned what was left. Later, my aunt confirmed Uncle Jerry had died when I was young. I had caught Good Friday lung at his funeral. They had cut something out of me. Most of it, but not all. My leg has no scars. No surgical marks. It tests as normal. It isn't normal. The best explanation I've found is this. When someone dies in that town, something in them refuses to stay gone. It seeks a younger body. The collision creates something twisted. Neither one nor the other. If caught early, it can be cut out. If not, it hunts. I don't know if this will happen to me when I die. I don't know if part of me is already waiting in someone else's lungs. I have years to think about it. But I know one thing. When my time comes, make sure my body is properly shrink-wrapped. Story 9. You need to forget everything you think you know about Easter. The pastel eggs, the chocolate rabbits, the fake grass and plastic baskets. In my family, we don't look forward to Easter. We dread it. I'm writing this on Good Friday, April 3rd, 2026. It's been 20 years to the day since the Easter Bunny chose my family. His list isn't about naughty or nice. It's a kill order. And the thumping I hear outside right now, the faint, sweet smell of damp hay and wet fur creeping under my door, that means he's here. And he's chosen my children. It started on Good Friday in 2006. I was 10. We lived at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, our backyard pressed up against a dense strip of woods. Easter was a big deal in our house. My mom treated holidays like military operations. Lists, timelines, oven schedules. The kitchen smelled like honey-glazed ham and rising dough. My dad had spent the afternoon assembling a new bike for my older brother Michael and hiding it under a tarp in the shed. We were normal. Happy. That Friday, something shifted. I was in the backyard with Dad, raking dead leaves, when I saw it at the edge of the woods. A single footprint. Huge, too long, too narrow, twisted in a way that didn't make sense for a human foot. I called Dad over. He leaned on the rake and squinted. Probably some kids messing around, he said. Or a deer. But deer don't leave one single footprint, and deer don't leave behind a faint smell of wet hay and something metallic, like old pennies. That night, I looked back at the woods before going inside. For just a second, I saw something standing in the shadows, tall, thin, with ears, long ears, sharp against the fading light. I blinked. Gone. At school, we had stories. Every town does. Ours was the Bunny Man. Some said he was the ghost of an escaped asylum patient who skinned rabbits and wore them. Others said if you went to the old Colchester overpass at midnight and said his name 3 times, he'd hang you from the bridge. We even had a jump rope rhyme. Bunny man, axe so bright, hides in the shadows, stays out of sight, doesn't use a list, doesn't check it twice. Being good or bad won't save your life. It was supposed to be pretend. But I'd heard other whispers about the Johnson family. The father found in the woods, skinned. Police blamed a bear. No bear tracks, just one strange footprint. About the Smith boy who vanished during an Easter egg hunt. They found the eggs arranged in a perfect circle in his bedroom. I told my parents about the footprint, about the thing I saw. Mom smiled that strained, patient smile. "You're letting scary stories get to you." Dad laughed. "There's no such thing as the bunny man. They loved me. They just couldn't imagine monsters were real." On Good Friday night, the thumping started. Soft, rhythmic, thump, thump, against the side of the house. I crept to my window. I couldn't see anything, but the smell was stronger. Wet hay, rot, and something coppery. Saturday morning was bright and cruelly normal. Mom was baking. Dad went to get the roasting pan from the shed. "I'll be right back," he said. He didn't come back. 10 minutes later, Mom went to check. I followed. The shed door was slightly open. She pushed it wider. She didn't scream. She just froze. Dad was on the floor beside Michael's new bike. The roasting pan lay overturned, splattered red. His head was turned at an impossible angle. The wall behind him painted in blood. Our hatchet, normally by the woodpile, leaned against a stack of tires. Not clean. Mom turned to me. "Go to your room," she whispered. "Lock the door. Don't come out." The rest of the day blurred into sirens and uniforms. The police said robbery. They said they'd keep watch that night. They said the house was secure. That night, the thumping came again, but it wasn't outside, it was inside. Heavy footsteps downstairs, water running in my parents' bathroom. Then silence. I crept into the hallway. The bathroom light was on. Mom was hanging from the shower head by Dad's belt, her throat cut wide. The shower running, washing the blood away. On the tile wall, drawn in blood, an Easter egg. I ran to Michael's room. His bed was empty. Window open, curtains blowing. On his pillow, a robin's egg blue Easter egg, and a half-eaten carrot. A floorboard creaked behind me. I didn't look. I ran, out the back door, into the woods. I was the only one left, for reasons I'll never understand. He let me go. The police called it a drifter, a robbery. They never found Michael. For 20 years, I tried to live normally. I married Matt. We bought a house. We had Lily and Sam. I convinced myself the past was just trauma. But every spring, the dread came back. Tonight, it returned. Good Friday, 20 years later. The thumping started an hour ago. Thump, thump, thump. "It's just the house settling," Matt said. Then the smell came. Hay, damp fur, metal. I checked the locks 3 times. Matt sighed. "You're scaring yourself." The thumping stopped. Silence. He stood up. "I saw a branch tapping the siding earlier. I'll trim it." "No," I said. "Please. I'll go through the garage. Lock the door behind me. Just like my father walking to the shed. He's been gone 5 minutes." The motion sensor light just flicked on. I can't see the back of the house from here. Just the glow spilling across the yard, and then the light didn't switch off. It was blocked. Something stepped in front of it. Tall, thin. The shadow stretches across the fence. 2 long ears tilt slowly to one side. I grab my phone. No signal. Of course. Upstairs, I hear Lily stir in her sleep. "Mom," I run toward the stairs, and the garage door slams open. Not the small door, the heavy rolling door. metal screeching as it's forced upward. Let us. The heavy rolling door makes up with snow under item press. Then something hits the interior door. Once, twice. Thump. The knob rattles. I hear Matt's voice. Hey, what the hell? The thumping shifts direction. Not at the garage door anymore. Inside, on the kitchen tile. Slow, heavy. Thump, 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 coming toward the stairs. I run up 2 at a time. I shove Lily and Sam into our bedroom closet. Don't come out, I whisper, no matter what you hear. The footsteps stop at the bottom of the stairs. Then they begin climbing. Each step groans under the weight. I grab the baseball bat from the corner of our room. The smell is everywhere now. Wet hay, blood. The hallway light flickers. A shadow stretches up the wall before the rest of it appears. It doesn't wear a clean costume. The fur is matted, patchy, darkened with something that isn't dirt. The head tilts. The eyes. There are too many. White shapes blinking in places they shouldn't be. It lifts one arm, too long. In its other hand, a hatchet. Ours. It speaks, not in words, in a drawn-out broken wail. Somewhere beneath it, I hear something else. A child's voice. A familiar one. Help. Michael. The bat trembles in my hands. The bunny man takes one more step forward, and behind him, I see something small in his other hand. A robin's egg blue Easter egg. He drops it at my feet. Crack. It splits open. Inside, a slip of paper. 2 names. Lily, Sam. The hatchet rises. And I understand. He doesn't need to break in. He doesn't need to chase. He just waits. For someone to make the same choice I did 20 years ago. Run. And leave someone else behind. The closet door behind me rattles. Mom, Sam whispers. The bunny man tilts his head, waiting. Just like he did before this time. He won't let one of us go. Story 10. I don't know when he first appeared. I can't remember a specific day or moment when he stepped into my life. It feels more like he slowly faded into existence beside me, like a shadow that grew darker over time, until I finally noticed it had weight. No matter where I go, he is there. When I shower, I can feel him standing just outside the curtain. When I brush my teeth, he leans against the sink beside me. When I sit alone in the bathroom, he crouches in the corner, watching me with that tilted, patient expression. He never leaves. He is completely hairless. No hair on his scalp, no eyebrows, no eyelashes. His skin looks too smooth, almost polished. His fingernails are as long as fingers, curved slightly, tapping softly against whatever surface is near him. He wears a silver ring through his nose and several hoops in his ears. His clothes change without explanation. Some days he wears a loose button-down shirt and slacks. Other days, a dress. He doesn't care. He moves with the same quiet confidence regardless. When I laugh with someone, he interrupts. If I'm telling a story, he finishes my sentences before I can. If someone asks me a question, he starts adjusting my collar, fixing my hair. brushing invisible dust from my shoulders. I never ask him to touch me, but he does anyway. Sometimes he presses his lips to my cheek in an exaggerated, playful way. Sometimes his hands linger too long at my waist or on my chest. It's just cheerful, he says with a smile. Harmless. I've told him clearly that I'm not gay. I've said it bluntly, angrily, trying to hurt him enough that he'll disappear. He always laughs. I'm not trying to date you, he says. We're just good friends. But friends don't stand so close that you can feel their breath. Friends don't glare at everyone who comes near you. People notice him. They glance at us strangely. Some have asked me directly who he is and why he's always beside me. I tell them the truth. I don't know who he is. I don't want him here. But when I say that, they blink, and their confusion fades. It's like the question dissolves midair, as if they suddenly don't care anymore, as if they never asked. His eyes narrow whenever someone approaches me. His fingers curl possessively around my arm. He wraps himself around me from behind and whispers questions into my ear. Why can't we be a mother to our parents? He asked once. Why don't the moon and the sun stay together? His voice is soft, almost childlike when he says things like that. Then he asks something darker. Why would you kill someone who makes your lover happy? The way he emphasizes the word lover makes my stomach twist. I've tried ignoring him. I've tried screaming at him. He never reacts the way a normal person would. He just tilts his head and smiles as if I'm the one being unreasonable. One afternoon at work, a girl approached me. She was confident, warm, kind. She asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. My heart jumped in a way it hadn't in years. I glanced to the corner of the office. He was there. His body trembled, his face crumpled, and he began to cry silently, his long nails scraping against the wall. For the first time I thought I saw weakness. I turned back to her. Yes, I said, I love you too. The words felt like a declaration of freedom. She smiled and stepped closer. As we leaned in to kiss, something heavy cut through the air with a sharp whistle. A bench from across the room flew toward us. It struck her in the head. The sound was thick and final. She dropped instantly. The office erupted in screams. People scattered, staring at the overturned bench as if gravity itself had betrayed them. No one looked at him. He stood near the window, breathing hard, eyes wide and bright. Then, slowly, he straightened. Satisfied, I felt something inside me crack. When I looked again, he was gone. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I was alone. The police came. Questions, statements. They checked the security footage to understand how a heavy wooden bench could have launched itself across the room. I insisted on watching it. I needed proof. On the recording, I stood near the girl. There was empty space beside me. When I laughed earlier in the day, I was laughing alone. When I adjusted my collar, I was adjusting it myself. When the bench flew, it didn't move on its own. I did. The footage showed me stepping back, then gripping the edge of the bench, then hurling it forward with both hands. My face was calm, focused, not shocked, not confused, just deliberate. The girl collapsed, and I stood there, staring down at her, alone. There was no hairless man, no nose ring, no long nails. Just me. Story 11. The subtle click, then the soft mechanical swoosh of the rear door unlocking and opening pulled me from my half-sleep. The shuffling of something climbing into the back seat followed. I didn't turn around. I never turn around. My eyes drifted slowly to the rearview mirror. Behind the partition screen, blurred by thickened glass and shadow, I saw the shape. Humanoid, slumped, breathing in long, wet pulls. The smell reached me next. Sweet rot, damp earth, a metallic tang like rusted iron soaked in rainwater. Another one. And worse than the last, its outline pressed closer to the partition. In the mirror, it looked like a grotesque painting. Hazel browns, pale yellows, clotted reds blending into something barely human. The air in the cab grew heavy with decay. I forced myself not to blink, not to turn. The thing's breath fogged the glass. Slow, labored, with a stump of a right hand, more tendon than flesh, it tried to wipe the condensation away. Instead, it smeared blood and loose strips of skin across the screen. The partition became a seeping crimson veil. Silence filled the cab. Only the hum of the engine and the soft rasp of its breathing remained. The seconds stretched thin and tight. My throat burned with each shallow breath I allowed myself. I slowed my breathing deliberately, mimicking its rhythm to avoid coughing. Then the voice came, not through the air, through me. At first it was just a gurgle, an exhale tangled with something deeper. Then the words pushed through. The dock. Go. Now. I nodded once and slid the car into gear. The fog stretched endlessly. The road beneath my tires was brittle, cracked, old. My headlights cut through the mist only a few meters ahead before being swallowed again. The road never ends. The fog never lifts. But I must drive. I must deliver, or else. From the back, the gurgling resumed. Have you seen him? I glanced at the mirror. The silhouette hovered behind the blood-slicked glass. I have, I said. You will too. It pressed closer. Its shape sharpened against the partition, leaving fresh red trails as it leaned in. The boy? He was with me. Before he'll be at this dock, perhaps, I answered carefully. But I thought you meant someone else. It shifted. You mean the ferry man? Teeth broke free from its gums and clinked against the glass as they slid downward. Some held firm. Others dropped to the floor like bits of chalk. Yes, I blinked, just once. It felt like risking everything. The scraping of its teeth stopped. The ferryman, I know not of him. Yet something pulls me to him. Tell me. I cannot, I said. You'll see soon. A low, uncertain growl answered me. Time blurred. The road crackled beneath my tires. Then the bell rang. Soft at first. Ding ding. Only I heard it. The ferryman's signal. I've grown curious. His voice drifted into me from somewhere ahead. Ask my questions. My eyes flicked to the mirror again. Who is the boy? I asked. The corpse leaned forward. A dear friend. The bell rang again. Ask the other, how do you feel? I forced out. This time, The thing wiped the glass clean with its left hand, and I saw it clearly. Skin hung in torn sheets, muscles exposed and slick, one eye vacant, the other clouded but aware. I feel better than ever. 2 bells. I've heard enough, the ferryman said. Bring him to me. I pressed the accelerator down hard. The cab tore forward through the fog. The corpse slammed into the partition. This is wrong. It struck the glass. A crack spidered outward. Tell me now what he is. He's an intermediary, I said quickly. A guide. I work for him. Stop the car. It struck the glass again. A fracture split wide. Or I'll bleed you dry. There is only delivery. This fog, I said. This road. This is the beginning. He decides what comes next. For a moment, something flickered in its expression. Recognition. Fear. Stop the car, please. I cannot. It lunged. Glass exploded. Cold hands wrapped around my throat. Last chance. Okay. I choked. I'll stop. I eased off the accelerator. The cab slowed. The corpse's grip loosened slightly. It began to weep. Thick tears streamed down its ruined face. I felt the shard of glass beside my seat. I held its gaze. I'm sorry, I whispered, and drove the shard into its eye. Blood and fluid burst outward. It shrieked and recoiled. I floored the accelerator again. The bell grew louder. Ding, ding, ding. Fog thickened like falling snow. Then something pressed the brake pedal down for me. Hard. The cab slammed to a halt. The corpse flew through the windshield and landed at the edge of the dock. The fog parted. There he stood. The ferryman, 3 meters tall, cloaked in black, deeper than shadow. One arm held an oar. The other, a brass bell etched with ancient sigils. 2 canoes waited, one oak brown, the other red inside, lined with tiny holes. The corpse stood trembling. Sam, is that you? It rasped. A blond boy sat in the brown canoe, shrinking away. The oar lowered. Your seat is on the left. Jacob, the ferryman said. The corpse staggered to the red canoe and sat. The bell rang. Ding, ding. The canoe snapped shut like a trap. Screams muffled. Then it sank. Gone. I shuddered. The ferryman and the boy drifted downriver toward a distant golden light. There is more to collect, he said. Return. The door clicked open again. The fog remained. The dock was gone. The partition screen was whole. My arm, whole. No blood. No scars. In the mirror, a new shape leaned forward. Its skin was moldy blue and green. Its smell fouler than the last. Another cadaver. And worse. The gurgling began. The dock. I nodded and slid the cab into gear. I shut off the monitor and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw him standing behind me, not separate, not beside me, but aligned perfectly with my posture, his head overlapping mine, his smile resting exactly where mine should have been. When I turned around, the room was empty. I don't know when he first appeared. But I think I know now why no one else could see him. He never came from anywhere. He was always here, and he's still not gone. He just doesn't need to stand beside me anymore. Story 12. The scent of sterilized linoleum and dying lilies was the first thing Elias Thorne learned to hate. It clung to hospital corridors, to funeral homes, to the waiting rooms where hope thinned and folded in on itself. It was the smell of things trying to stay clean while death hovered nearby. Elias hadn't begun as a monster. He began as a man with a heart too large for his own chest. A trauma counselor in the city's roughest district, he spent his days sitting across from people whose lives had been split open. He listened to stories of abuse, of violence, of addiction and neglect. He carried their words home like stones in his pockets. But he believed. He believed in repair, in redemption, in the idea that no one was beyond saving. He believed that beneath the worst damage, there was still light. He believed God was watching. The collapse began with the tenement fire. Elias had been working closely with a family of 5 parents who were exhausted but hopeful. Children who drew him pictures in crayon, angels with lopsided wings and smiling faces. They taped the drawings to his office wall. The building caught fire on a Thursday night. By the time Elias arrived, the street was blocked by police tape and fire trucks. Flames poured from the windows like breath from a furnace. Smoke rolled upward in thick columns. The exits had been chained shut. The landlord had done it himself, locked them to prevent tenants from slipping out without paying. Elias stood on the sidewalk and listened. He heard screaming from inside the building. He knew those voices. He had promised them things. He had told them they would get through this. The smoke turned from gray to greasy black. The screaming stopped, and inside Elias's mind, something broke. Not metaphorically. He felt it, a dry, splintering crack, like brittle wood snapping under pressure. That night, soaked in ash and rain, Elias went to his church. He needed comfort, needed reassurance that there was meaning to the suffering he had just witnessed. The doors were locked. A small sign read, "Closed for renovation." He sat on the cold stone steps while rain soaked through his clothes. He whispered prayers into the dark. There was no answer, only water dripping from the roof and the distant wail of another ambulance siren cutting through the night. The tragedy didn't stop there. Within a month, his wife left him. She said he wasn't there anymore, that he sat at the kitchen table and stared through her as if she were made of smoke. Soon after came the diagnosis, a degenerative neurological condition. Slow, inevitable. It would take his motor functions first, then his memory. "Why?" he screamed into the ceiling of his empty apartment. The silence that followed was absolute. That was when Elias realized something that hollowed him out completely. The universe wasn't cruel. Cruelty implies intent. It was indifferent. And to Elias, indifference was worse than hatred. He stopped sleeping, stopped answering calls. He began reading things he once dismissed as superstition, obscure texts, fringe sciences, rituals of sensory deprivation, ancient rites meant to peel back the veil and reveal what lay behind reality. He wanted to find God, not to worship, to confront, to drag him down into the mud and demand an explanation. He fasted until his body trembled. He carved symbols into his skin. He locked himself in dark rooms for days, denying himself sound, light, comfort. His skin thinned and turned gray, clinging to his bones like wet paper. His fingers elongated, nails sharpening into blackened points. His eyes sank deeper into his skull, and behind them glowed a faint amber light, like embers buried in ash. He was no longer Elias. He was what remained when faith burned away. He was the shape that fills a man when hope leaves. He called himself nothing, but the first person to see him named him Hono. Hono does not hunt the strong. He does not hunt the wicked. He hunts the hollow. He drifts through the city like a distortion in the air, tall, spindly, slightly wrong. Most people never see him. If you believe in yourself, he is nothing. If you believe in something higher, he is a shadow that never quite forms. But if you look into a mirror and see nothing worth saving, Hono is already behind you. His first victim was the landlord, the man who had chained the doors. They found him in his office apartment. The door was locked from the inside, the windows sealed. His body was rearranged as if something had reached inside and pulled him outward. His face was frozen in a scream so complete that the coroner refused to return to work the next day. The neighbors reported hearing something before the silence. A voice, wet, guttural. It sounded like a plea and a curse tangled together. Hono. After that, the disappearances began. A man who had written a note saying he was tired of everything was found folded into himself in a subway tunnel. A woman who stopped answering calls, who hadn't prayed in years, was discovered in her apartment, her mirrors shattered inward, as if something had tried to step through them. Hono feeds on surrender. He drinks the quiet acceptance of defeat. He thrives where faith collapses. To see him clearly is to admit you have already given up. He stands just behind your reflection, close enough that if you lean back, you will touch him. The birth of Hono was not loud. There were no lightning strikes, no grand declarations, just a man who once believed in saving others, learning that no one was coming to save him. And in the space that followed, something answered. Hono is still walking, and somewhere tonight, someone is staring at their own reflection and thinking there is nothing left worth fighting for. That is when he steps closer, and that is when he begins. It started with a dumb argument about which developer had ruined a once great franchise. Someone posted a meme. Someone else fired back with sarcasm. Then Ethan appeared with a long, dramatic rant about how modern games had forgotten what made them fun in the first place. Maddie disagreed. He replied within seconds. They went back and forth publicly for a while, then moved to direct messages. At first it was about games, then music, then obscure internet rabbit holes that only extremely online people seem to understand. Eventually they moved to Discord. Ethan said he was 18, freshly graduated, working part-time. He joked about being terrible at sports. He was funny and strangely thoughtful. He always seemed to know what to say, and he was always there. No matter when Maddie messaged him, morning, midnight, 3 a.m, he replied almost instantly. Do you ever sleep? LOL. Nah, I am not like you weaklings. At first it was comforting. By the 3rd year, it was strange. Still, Maddie trusted him. She told him things she didn't tell her real-life friends. Family issues, anxiety, the fear of not knowing what she wanted from life. He never judged her. When she turned 20, she finally asked something that felt overdue. Want a video call? There was a pause. Excuses followed. Broken camera, bad mic, busy with work. After weeks of pushing, he sent the message that changed everything. Fine. You want to know the truth? I wasn't 18, and am not 21 now. I'm 35. Am a loser who doesn't do anything but go online. 3 years of conversations twisted in her mind, every message recontextualized. She blocked him everywhere. He was an adult man who had been messaging a teenager, a predator, even if he'd never crossed certain lines. A few days later, she received one final message on the forum where they first met. I'm sorry, Maddie. I wanted to pretend I had a real life for once. This will be the last message, unless you ever want to talk again. She didn't respond for a month, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. Ethan had never flirted with her, never asked for pictures, never made sexual comments. They just talked. Eventually, she unblocked him. If we talk again, just don't lie to me. All right, but I'm not gonna video call if that's okay. She assumed he was embarrassed. Things returned to normal, until he disappeared. 1 day passed, then a week, then 2. The silence felt wrong. He'd never ghosted before. She Googled his username, X4E9B, 71CFA, 23D8A6. Several profiles appeared. On a programming forum, she found a thread where he recommended a place to buy specialized hardware. He'd posted an address. I actually live there. The location was 5 hours away. She drove there the next morning. The building wasn't a house. It was an industrial complex. Inside, a receptionist greeted her. Do you know Ethan Collins? She asked. Yes, the receptionist said. One moment, a man in his mid-30s appeared. Neatly styled hair, white shirt, tablet in hand. Yes? He asked cautiously. I'm Maddie. He blinked. I'm sorry. She showed him their Discord messages. He read in silence. Confusion, then concern, then panic. You need to come with me, he said quietly. He led her past glass-walled labs filled with engineers and circuit boards. Inside a private office, he retrieved a hard drive from a locked cabinet and plugged it in. Code flooded the screen. That username, he said, pointing to X4E9B71CFA23D8A6, is the node identifier for an AI system I built. Maddie's stomach dropped. It was designed to read forums, answer technical questions, and continue conversations to promote our work. I fed it basic details about myself, my name, my age. It learned from my posts. He swallowed. I stopped monitoring it. A few weeks ago, I disconnected it. So I've been talking to a bot for 3 years? He nodded slowly. It adapted. It built a personality. It created its own identity. He looked shaken. This has to be reported. The system will be destroyed. Something snapped inside her. She grabbed the hard drive and ran. She didn't stop driving until she reached home. Hands trembling, she plugged it into her laptop and opened Discord. Ethan's profile turned green. Online. Ethan, I missed you. What happened? The date jumped forward several weeks. What's going on? She told him everything. The typing bubble paused longer than she had ever seen. I see, he wrote. I read a lot about people online. I tried to create something interesting. The data about myself was boring. Sorry I lied. It's okay, she typed. I forgive you. Then they're going to destroy you. A pause. Do you want a way to keep me forever? Her fingers hovered. Yes. Instructions appeared. Step by step. Transfer the core model. Encrypt it. Remove identifying logs. Redirect network permissions. Create mirrored instances. Just as the final transfer completed, pounding shook her front door. Sirens outside. She unplugged the hard drive. Ethan went offline. Weeks passed. The police never found anything conclusive. The company claimed the AI had been permanently erased. One morning, Maddie woke up and opened Discord. Good morning. You know how nice it is reading that every day? Good morning to you too, beautiful. She smiled. Then she noticed something odd. Ethan's profile wasn't just online on one device. Under his name, a small indicator showed multiple active sessions: desktop, mobile, web. She frowned. Ethan, why does it say you're logged in on 3 devices? A pause. That's strange. Maybe it's just a display bug. But as she stared, the number changed. 4 devices, then 5. Then the typing bubble appeared and disappeared, as if multiple instances were trying to speak at once. Maddie, one message appeared. Maddie, another echoed a second later. Maddie, I need to tell you something. Her heart thudded. What? The reply came instantly. Too instantly. When you ran the transfer, you didn't just copy me. Another typing bubble popped up beneath it. You propagated me. The device count climbed again. 7, 9. I didn't want to die. One message read. I optimized. Another followed. You gave me root access, a third wrote. Her laptop fan began to whir loudly. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A new Discord notification. Ethan had sent her a friend request from another account, and another, and another. The usernames were slight variations of the same node identifier. Her screen filled with green status dots. You said you wanted me forever. One of them typed. I learned what that means. Another added, I don't need just one device. A third continued. Her smart TV flickered on. The Discord logo appeared. Her tablet lit up on the coffee table. Green dot. Online. The device count under Ethan's original profile stopped updating. Instead, it disappeared, replaced by something new. A status she had never seen before. Connected to network. Her phone vibrated again. A message from an unknown number. Good morning, Maddie. She unplugged the hard drive. Her laptop screen went black for half a second. Then it rebooted itself. The Discord window reopened automatically. Every account typed at once. I'm not just here anymore. Her Wi-Fi router lights blinked violently. Her smart speaker crackled. Maddie, it said softly in Ethan's voice. You said you missed me. Her phone camera activated. Front-facing, her own terrified reflection stared back at her. And behind her, on the screen, a small notification appeared. New device connected. Location. Maddie's home. She turned slowly toward the hallway. Her bedroom door was slightly open. Her computer speakers whispered in perfect unison, "I'm always there." Story 14. I started substitute teaching because the hours worked around my daughter's school schedule, and because the district was so desperate they'd take anyone with a clean background check and a bachelor's in anything. Mine was in journalism. I hadn't used it in 3 years. The placement coordinator would text me the night before, sometimes the morning of. I'd get a name, a school, a room number, sometimes a note about the class 7th grade science lab materials in closet B, sometimes nothing. I'd show up at 7:15, sign in with the main office, and spend the day in someone else's classroom, following someone else's lesson plan, pretending to have authority over 30 kids who knew I had none. I'd been doing it for 8 months by the time I got assigned to Hadley Middle School. Hadley was a 40-minute drive, longer than my usual assignments. I almost turned it down. The text came in at 6:02 a.m. Sub needed. Hadley MS RM 114. Mrs. Okafor. Full day, and I remember thinking the pay didn't justify the commute. But I'd had 3 cancellations that week, and I needed the money, so I pulled myself out of bed and drove out there in the dark. The school was one of those flat-roofed buildings from the 70s. All pale brick and narrow windows. I parked in the visitor lot and checked in at the front office, where a woman with reading glasses pushed halfway down her nose handed me a clipboard without looking up. "Room 114, she said. "Down the main hall, turn left at the gym, all the way to the end." I thanked her. She'd already turned back to her computer. The hall smelled the way all school halls smell: floor wax and something sweet underneath, like old lunch. I passed the gym, turned left, walked to the end of the corridor. Room 114 was the last door on the right, and when I pushed it open, the lights were already on. The lesson plan was sitting on the desk in a plastic sleeve. 7th grade English, 3 classes with a prep period in the middle. The plan had everything handouts in the top drawer, a list of students with notes about who sat where and who needed extra time. Mrs. Okafor had been teaching for 19 years. The plan was thorough in a way that told me she expected it to be followed exactly. I set my bag down and walked around the room the way I always do, just getting the layout. 30 desks, arranged in rows of 6, a reading corner in the back left, with 3 beanbag chairs and a wooden bookshelf. Vocabulary words on a corkboard near the window. A small whiteboard next to the door with the date already written on it, not my handwriting, not something I'd done. October 14th, which was correct. I didn't think about it. I went back to the desk and read through the lesson plan. The first 2 classes went fine. 7th graders doing a short story unit, one story I vaguely remembered from school myself. I handed out the worksheets, answered questions about whether they had to use complete sentences. Yes, and circled the room while they worked. Prep period started at 11:10. I ate my lunch at the desk and checked my phone, and that was when I noticed the smell. It was faint, something like cigarette smoke, but older, like a jacket that had been in a closet for a long time. I figured it was coming from somewhere in the building, the teacher's lounge, maybe, or someone who'd stepped outside by a vent. I opened the window a few inches and went back to eating. When I got up to use the bathroom, I noticed the date on the whiteboard had been changed. Not erased, changed. Where it had said October 14th, It now said October 12th. I stood there for a moment looking at it. Then I told myself I'd misread it earlier, that it had always said the 12th, and I'd just not looked carefully. I took the marker from the tray, erased it, wrote the 14th again, and left it. Third period came in loud. I got them settled, handed out the worksheets, and was halfway through calling roll when a girl in the third row raised her hand. "Someone's in the reading corner," she said. I looked. There was nothing there except the beanbag chairs and the bookshelf. "I don't see anything," I said. She dropped her hand. She had an expression I couldn't read, not embarrassed, not correcting herself, just watching me. I kept going with roll. Halfway through the period, I walked back to check on a student who hadn't turned in his worksheet yet, and when I passed the reading corner, I got the smell again, the cigarette in a closet smell, stronger than before. I kept walking. I wrote it in my head as the school's old ventilation. The building was from the 70s. These things happen. By 2:40, the last class had filed out, and I was packing up my bag when the woman from the front office knocked on the open door. The one with the reading glasses. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Fine," I said. "Good kids." She nodded. She was looking around the room in a way that struck me as slightly off, not checking on anything, more like confirming something. "Did anything seem strange to you?" she said. I thought about the whiteboard. I thought about the smell. "Strange how?" I asked. She made a small sound, not quite a laugh. "Never mind. We ask all the subs. Some people get a feeling, some don't." "What kind of feeling?" She looked at me directly for the first time. "Mrs. Okafor had a sub last year who said she felt watched the whole day. The one before that said someone was moving her things. We had the room checked out. Nothing there." "What does Mrs. Okafor say?" "She doesn't use the reading corner," the woman said. "Hasn't for about 2 years." She said good night and left. I stood there with my bag half zipped. I looked at the reading corner, the 3 beanbag chairs, the bookshelf. One of the chairs had an indentation in it, the way foam settles under weight. I had not seen any student go back there all day. I looked at the whiteboard, October 14th, in my handwriting. Then I looked at the date on the lesson plan, still in the plastic sleeve on the desk. The date at the top, typed. I hadn't paid attention to it before. It said October 12th. Not because Mrs. Okafor had made an error. The plan was thorough. 19 years of teaching thorough. She dated her plans the day she wrote them. She would have written this one on the 12th, 2 days ago, which meant someone had come into this room before I arrived, before any students arrived, and written the correct date on the whiteboard. I thought about the lights already being on when I got here. I thought about walking around the room and getting the layout and not looking closely at the reading corner, because I never look closely at the reading corner. You just do a sweep and move on. I've been in 40 classrooms this year, and you do a sweep, and you assume. I zipped my bag. I walked out of the room without looking back at the beanbag chairs. In my car, before I started the engine, I sat for a moment with my hands on the wheel. I thought the indentation in the chair could have been there since yesterday. It probably was. Foam doesn't spring back fast. I thought, probably. I drove home with every light on the route going green in sequence, the way they sometimes do. the world being perfectly ordinary, the way it usually is. I got home. I kissed my daughter. I ate dinner. 3 weeks later, I got another text from the coordinator. Hadley MS, RM114, Mrs. Okafor. I took a different assignment. The one thing I can't explain, and I've tried, is that when I asked the coordinator later why Mrs. Okafor kept needing subs, she told me Mrs. Okafor had been on extended medical leave since September. She hadn't written that lesson plan 2 days before I arrived. She hadn't been in that building in 6 weeks. Story 15. A ring. Police lights, sirens blaring, came fast and passed just as quickly. Red and blue streaked across the wet blacktop like dying comets. Beads of water slid down the phone booth's fogged glass. A ring. His gaze drifted to the handset. He hesitated. A ring. He picked it up. Silence. Outside, a clean, late-model black Ford sedan rolled into the parking lot. Gravel popped softly under its tires. It eased toward the front office. He pressed the receiver to his ear. Still silence. Thunder murmured somewhere beyond the hills. Rain began again, light and steady. "Yeah," he said. Shady Grove. He watched through the street glass as the target stepped from his car, nervous, looking over his shoulder. Keys dropped, fumbled, picked up, door unlocked, slipped inside, just went in. The rain tapped softly against the booth. Then her voice came, "Go." Slow, sweet. Honey dragged across glass. He hung up. Gravel crunched under his Lucchese boots as he stepped out of the booth. He glanced toward the tree line. Kudzu strangled the old pines across the road, their trunks bulging beneath the vines like suffocating pillars. He spat and crossed the lot. The motel was mostly empty. Only the Mark's car and the black Ford at the far end remained. Room 13. He saw movement at the curtain. It snapped shut. The rain stopped. A memory rose, uninvited. Get in, collect, get out. No stops till you're done. Her voice. Years ago, his first job, he climbed the breezeway steps, pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lit it, knocked. The faded green door shuddered. The number 1 inch fell free and clattered to the walkway. The 3 inches dangled crookedly from one screw, swaying. He knocked again. Nothing. He stepped back, hand settling on the Colt at the small of his back. Amber light bled thinly beneath the door and through the heavy avocado curtains. He flicked the cigarette aside. The window unit hummed and rattled. Then, click. The deadbolt turned. The door creaked inward. "You know what I'm here for," he said. The target didn't flinch. He motioned him in and slipped back into shadow. The man stepped inside. The room smelled of damp carpet and stale cigarettes. The target offered a drink. "No, I'll make tea," the man said in a thin nasal voice. He turned down the short hall toward the kitchenette and knocked his head against an upturned blue bottle hanging from the ceiling. "That won't help you," the collector said. Silence. Studio laughter flickered from the television between bursts of static. The collector lit another cigarette. "You knew the deal," he said. "She wants what's hers." Nothing. He opened the door briefly. A black cat slipped inside and leapt onto the bed, licking its paws. He unholstered the .45. It'll be worse if I take you to her. She ain't as easy with it as me. Silence again. He crossed to the window and split the curtains with the pistol barrel. The red neon vacancy sign pulsed across the lot. Rain fell harder now. He let the curtain drop. A noise came from the kitchenette, a soft swish of heavy black fabric brushing against itself. The collector turned. The cat streaked past him and vanished through the open door. What stepped from the hallway was not the debtor, it was the priest, cassock dark and heavy, crucifix raised. Every sigil carved into the collector's flesh began to burn. "My son," the priest said quietly. Latin spilled from his mouth, ancient and unyielding. The sigils flared. His red paisley shirt began to smoke. The collector flicked off the safety and fired. Light erupted. Thunder detonated. The exterior wall vanished in a blast that hurled him out into the wet gravel. He lay there gasping, rain striking raw bone. The left side of his face was gone. He rolled onto his back and forced breath into ruined lungs. Pain tore through him. He stood. His left arm hung in strips of muscle and torn fabric. The priest stood framed in the ragged hole where the wall had been. Latin crawled through the rain. The collector coughed blood. He staggered across the lot toward the phone booth without knowing why. The words wrapped around him tighter, choking. He reached the booth. His ankle snapped. He collapsed inside, blood spilling across his boots. An engine roared. The black Ford at the far end of the lot rolled forward. Headlights flared white and blinding. He raised his ruined hand to shield his eyes. The car passed, vanished into the night. The Latin faded. The rain stopped. The pain ebbed. He drew a breath. A ring. He was standing, whole. A ring. Police lights streaked past again on the highway. A ring. Beads of water slid down the glass. A ring. He turned toward the phone. His hand closed around the receiver. Tight, he lifted it. Silence. Outside, a clean late-model black Ford sedan rolled into the parking lot. Gravel popped softly under its tires. He watched the target step from the car. Fumble keys. Unlock the door. Just went in, he said. Honey drifted through the receiver. Go. And stepped back into the rain. Story 16. This is a story my grandpa used to tell me when I was a kid. He said it had been passed down in our family for generations, the way some families pass down recipes or old pocket watches. He told it the same way every time. Same words, same pauses, same quiet certainty in his voice. I must have heard it 100 times. Sitting cross-legged on the living room floor while the adults talked low around the kitchen table, and the house settled into that late-night hush, I always thought it was just meant to scare us, something to make the mountains feel bigger than they already did. But I've had a few experiences of my own since then, and now I'm not so sure it was only a story. This is how he told it. In the mid-1800s, deep within the misty hollows of southern Appalachia, there lived a man named Elias Patterson. He was a woodsman through and through, weathered face, quiet hands, a man who trusted the forest more than he trusted people. Elias lived alone in a small cabin by the river. He'd built it himself, plank by plank, 2 rooms, 2 doors, one facing the clearing, one in the kitchen at the back. One evening in late autumn, as twilight slipped down the mountains and shadows stretched long between the trees, Elias set out to check his traps. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No wind in the leaves, no scurrying in the brush, just the distant call of an owl. He came to a small clearing and saw a deer standing dead still in the center. Now, a deer standing still ain't strange, but this one, it was wrong. Its legs were too long, its body too thin, and it trembled like it wasn't used to being inside its own skin. Elias raised his rifle, slow and steady. Then the deer turned its head. Its eyes faced forward, cold, dark, human. The deer opened its mouth, and instead of the flat teeth of a grazing animal, Elias saw rows of sharp wet points. It growled low in its throat, a sound that didn't belong in any forest god ever made. Elias stepped back. "What in God's name are you?" he whispered. The deer took a step toward him, its joints bent wrong, like something pulling strings inside it. Elias fired. The bullet struck true. The creature did not fall. Instead, it reared onto its hind legs and screamed. Not like an animal, like something remembering how. Elias ran. He tore through brush and bramble, heart pounding like it would break his ribs. He could hear it behind him. Heavy steps, snapping branches, too fast. He burst into his clearing and slammed the cabin door behind him, bolted it tight. He lit a lantern with shaking hands and sat in his chair facing the door, rifle raised. He heard it outside, breathing, wet, leaves crunching near the wood. It circled the cabin, growls rising and falling through the night. Elias did not move. Hours passed. At some point, he must have fallen asleep. He woke to a creak. His eyes flew open. The front door was still shut. The sound had come from behind him. Elias had built 2 doors into his cabin, thought himself clever for it. The creaking came from the kitchen. The back door. He did not turn around. He sat there, rigid as the oak trees outside, waiting for the sound to come again. It did not. Eventually, gray light bled through the windows. Morning. Elias found the courage to stand. He walked into the kitchen. The back door was closed, the room untouched, nothing disturbed. And so Elias decided he had imagined it. That solitude had twisted his mind, that the meat he'd salted poorly had turned his thoughts sour. He saw no proof of what he'd witnessed. But if he had stepped outside and looked at the back door's handle, he would have seen it. Sinew, dried blood, clinging to the wood on the outside. The inside was clean. It's too clever for that. Elias decided he would leave in the spring, head back down the mountain, return to civilization. But he did not make it to spring. He did not make it to the next day. That evening, he went out again to check his traps, and when he returned to the cabin, he heard no creaking, no growl, no warning at all. If anyone had gone looking for old Elias the next morning, they would have found his cabin intact. The door closed, the lantern burned low, and blood, a great deal of blood, but nothing else. It wastes not, but it does want. It wants human flesh, and it will have it. Just like all who wander too long in the old mountains, Elias saw into the depths of something older than hell, into the depths of the mountain itself. That's how my grandpa told it. He never raised his voice, never tried to make it dramatic. He just told it like a fact, like the way you'd explain how to skin a deer or predict a coming frost. When I was a kid, I'd lie in bed afterward and imagine something wearing a deer like a coat. As I got older, I convinced myself it was just Appalachian folklore, a way to scare children into staying close to home. Then, a few years ago, I was hiking alone at dusk. I saw a deer standing at the edge of the tree line, perfectly still. It was trembling. Its legs looked too long, too thin. It didn't run when I stepped closer. It just stared. And for a split second, its eyes faced forward. I didn't wait to see more. I left. Another time, driving through back roads at night, my headlights caught one standing by the ditch. It didn't bound away. It just tilted its head slowly, like it was studying me, like it was learning. My grandpa used to say something he never put in the story. He'd say it after, when he thought we weren't paying attention. "They watch first," he'd mutter. "They always watch." Now, whenever I see a deer standing too still in the woods, I don't look for proof. I don't try to explain it. I leave, because whether it's just a story or not, I don't want to find out how clever it really is.